Okay.
All right, we're live now, and I don't know if people have started, I don't think people have started joining in at the moment. So we'll just, oh, we do have a few attendees here.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. Hi, guys. Yeah, thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and just take a moment to try to put this on Facebook Live and see if we can get some people to join that way. So if you do know anybody on Facebook, if this works, they can look for us there. Okay.
Awesome. Okay,
All
cool.
right. And we have a Facebook page called Envision You, Holistic Psychotherapy Services. And let's see. Hoping this works.
Technology, man. That's more of the theme.
Go live. Okay. Go live anyway. Okay, let's see if this works.
Oh, yeah. It looks like it's on.
Oh, good. All right, well, welcome everybody. I'm so glad that you could join us today. I see that there are still people who are joining us and logging in, which is fantastic. We are doing our second of the series, The Pandemic Pause, and our topic today is dating and quarantine. I am Monica Sharma. For those who don't know me, I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and owner of Envision You.
Hi, guys. I am Kayleen Penn. I am a licensed professional counselor with Envision You.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about dating in quarantine today. And I imagine that there are many different dating situations that are happening amongst those of you who are listening to us today. And we're going to do our best to address all of them. And certainly we welcome like anyone who wants to chat or ask a question to use those buttons. And want to let you know though that I think by default your name would be seen. However, we can have you, I think there should be an option to post anonymously so that you can do it with some privacy and you don't have to worry then about other people knowing who's asking what. So, all right.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, just to kind of even jump in a little bit here. Yeah. So I know we're going to be touching, or at least today's video is kind of the theme of it is around dating. And, this is something I think myself and my colleagues and Dr. Sharma here have been kind of noticing a lot of themes and questions about. So we really wanted to be able to kind of address that with you guys. And we recognize that everybody's in a lot of different themes when it comes to dating. So there is, of course, like singlehood, like being single right now, or just trying to date in general using the apps. And then of course, maybe you had met somebody right before quarantine happened and now you guys are like, what the heck, how do we keep doing this? And then of course, long-term relationships, right? Dating long-term, how quarantine's kind of impacting that and all. So we did want to kind of get to know you guys a little bit more, hear what your guys' experience is. So we do have a poll. I know, Monica, I think you kind of released that to everybody here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you wanted to get a sense of what your status is, and then we have a couple follow-up questions with that as well.
Yep. Yeah. So,
So here we
um,
go. I
yeah.
think
So,
you should be, oh, go
sorry.
ahead, Kayleen.
Let's say you can guys take a quick second here just to kind of go through the poll to see, which one you guys are like connecting with. We have a couple of questions for you guys.
So I'm hoping you can see the poll live. It's showing that it's live. I see some answers coming in now.
Perfect.
So just to let you know, there's a total of 3 questions in this poll. The first one is asking, what is your relationship status? And then the second one is asking on a scale of 1 to 5, how satisfied are you with your current relationship status? And then the third question is asking on a scale of 1 to 5, how certain or uncertain do you feel regarding what will happen to your relationship post-quarantine?
Yeah. And we also recognize that, there's a lot of like in-betweens of some of this stuff as well. So that's okay. Just answers to what you feel like is most accurate to you.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to leave this up for another like 5 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and see what the results are. Okay, so I'm going to share the results with you. And it looks like most of you are single and trying to date, 25%. And then we've got a couple people who are single and not dating, or talking to somebody new and not exclusive, or in a long-term relationship and living with someone, and some spattering. And it looks like most of you are somewhere in the middle in terms of being very satisfied or not at all satisfied in your relationship. I think that's understandable. And then on the third question, which is how uncertain do you feel, it looks like the majority feel a little uncertain about what is going to happen with your relationship post-quarantine. I'm going to stop sharing the results now. It's good to get a sense of who is in our audience as we talk today. So I'm going to go ahead and just start with acknowledging that some of you, again, are single and not really looking to date right now, but you might be thinking about dating once quarantine ends. And, I think that that's fine. This is in some ways a real opportunity for you to do some introspection and focus on yourself, get to know yourself a bit better. I think when we are running around in the day-to-day demands of our regular life, it can be really hard to find the time to just sit down and just be with ourselves. We're meeting this demand and having to go to this place, and there's a lot of distractions. So this is a time to be introspective. And if you are interested in dating once quarantine ends, you may benefit from looking at some patterns of your dating behaviors in the past and the partners that you've chosen. And this could be a way to start looking at that and figuring out, is there a pattern that exists that hasn't been working for you? And what are some things that you might find beneficial to do differently? It's also time that you can start looking at your fundamental needs. Oftentimes, again, we just get caught up in these different patterns and we just go along with it, but it's not really meeting what it is that we fundamentally need when we think about a partner. Thinking about people who make us feel like a better version of ourselves, who lift us up, who cheer us on, who make us feel like we can live a lot more expansively than we might otherwise in life. So use this pause for those things. And you can do that by, focusing on yourself, your self-care, focusing on things like your fitness and your health, both emotional health and physical health. You can also start a journal as a way of looking at some of the patterns, or pick up a hobby or engage more in a hobby that you already love. But anything that you choose to do at this time is going to help you to feel more connected to yourself and clear with what it is that's important to you and who you want to be in a relationship. Hence, you'll be more attractive to a future dating partner. And there's a version of yourself that's, once you move back out into the world, that's going to feel larger and more capable and like who you are.
Yeah, I think, and singlehood, I think, is something for us to kind of really be thinking about. I think a lot of times people think oh, I don't want to be single. It's a thing I don't want. So actually, even to kind of go from singlehood now into dating, I think something that we really need to be asking ourselves actually is, and reflect on the question here, is whether we really want to be dating right now or whether we feel like we should, or we believe that we should be dating. And I actually think those produce two different answers here. A lot of people that I work with feel a pretty strong motivation to be dating, not solely because of the want and desire to connect and meet somebody, but because there's age-related pressures, there is maybe some coping mechanisms going on during this time that, again, we might be kind of maybe also comparing ourselves with our friends who are in a relationship and thinking oh, I really wish that I was with a partner during all this. And so that can just kind of create those pressures for us to feel like we should be dating. So to really reflect on that question, actually, I think is really important, because things are already crazy as it is. Your well-being should be a priority here. And if dating right now is a detriment to your well-being, maybe we should take a look at taking that pause, taking a break here from dating and engaging in and enjoying your singlehood. However, if we are interested in dating at this time, as it seems like many of us are based on the poll, there are probably a lot of questions and concerns you guys have related to what it means to be dating. So I know a lot of themes that are coming up, of course, is that just that loneliness feeling, right? Again, comparing with our friends who are in relationships, we're like, oh, I really wish I was dating somebody. And then, of course, just that frustration of like that lack of connection with people. We're obviously getting really pushed into using the dating apps right now. Those are like booming like crazy. So for those who maybe have been really hesitant about using dating apps, there is maybe the kind of perk that's opening you guys up to maybe giving them a try, since that is a great way to meet people. But again, I can also get the frustration of using those, especially if we feel like we're just swiping, and we get like 15 matches or something, or however many, and we're like, oh god, overwhelming, I don't want to have to respond to all of these. And then of course the other part of dating is, how do I connect with somebody? And we're missing that physical connection. We're missing that, meeting up with in person and, having that face-to-face date. But not just to look at the challenges, I also do want to acknowledge the perks of this time too, is that I think a lot of us think like, oh, this is a horrible time to be dating because you can't connect with anybody. We actually really want to challenge that notion, because this actually could be a really great time to meet somebody. There is the fact that there's not that physical hormonal thing that kind of gets in the way, where we really have to connect with someone through conversation, through like bonding over certain things. Like there's not exactly a ton of distractions. It gives us an opportunity to get out of our comfort zones, to try new things, new ways of dating that maybe we weren't really open to doing before. And I'm going to get into that a little bit here, of course. And then also it gives us the opportunity to establish healthy boundaries with people that we're trying to date. I know people are asking also the question of like, can I meet up with somebody? Can I not meet up with somebody? What's the boundary with that? So to kind of jump into to like the how-tos of some of these challenges, I do think it's important to talk about that loneliness piece. Like, Dr. Sharma was saying here, definitely take this time to do some self-work here, develop, beautiful self-love for yourself, develop, maybe more creative outlets for yourself, hobbies, lean into the friendships that you currently have right now. Just maybe embrace, maybe there's some purposeness around that loneliness. But then of course, jumping into kind of like the dating piece, how the heck do we feel connected with somebody? I think this is also a question that we get to when just we're not in a pandemic or a quarantine. So one of the things that I encourage you guys to do at this time is a really key element that I think you guys will probably see as beneficial throughout the phases of our relationships is creativity. So now's a really good time to connect with somebody, obviously via video. So maybe you guys are doing watching Netflix shows together through like the app called like Brave, or using House Party to play games together. A lot of concerts and museums are now kind of open and available for people to kind of view via online. So you guys can really use this opportunity to get super creative. There's great ways of wooing each other right now. So I know there's like opportunities to do maybe some distant picnicking or something. Or another great option is cooking each other dinner and then just maybe dropping it off at the other person's home if you guys feel comfortable with that. So that there's a little bit of that romance piece, and that creativity helps make things kind of fun, light, and airy. And then of course, one of my personal favorite things, I think, for people to kind of spice things up, actually create good conversation, is don't be afraid to get a little silly. Don't be afraid to get vulnerable. So, asking each other silly questions that also maybe lead to deeper conversations. I think an example of this is like, what was your favorite toy in childhood and all? That's a really great way to kind of just open conversation up. That's more than just, what do you do for a living? What are you doing during this time of quarantine? That are kind of now officially like standard questions. It gets things kind of flowing a little bit more. But the other piece of the question here too was, how do we create boundaries during this time? And that's a big question. And obviously, I recommend following the CDC's protocols, but at the same time here, whenever maybe we do come out of quarantine, or maybe also during quarantine, is we want to approach our boundaries in a way that is about keeping ourselves healthy. So I think Esther Perel kind of had a really good example of this is whenever we're engaging safety and our sexual activity with new people, generally the important questions are, hey, have you been tested? When's the last time? Have you been safe with other partners? Things like that. So that you guys are opening the dialogue of like safety. That same concept can actually be kind of maybe applied to these meeting up, who have you hung out with lately? Have you been social distancing? To kind of just create that boundary when it comes to, just dating right now.
Great. And many of you, I actually know of a case with a friend who actually has met somebody through quarantine and has already feel like she's developing a lot of feelings, and they've done some of the things that Kayleen suggested. So once again, to repeat what Kayleen has said, is that this is an opportunity where actually some deeper relationships can form, even when you're meeting people in this state. So now some of you are also, maybe had just met somebody right before we were asked to shelter at home and been faced with some choices around that. Like, okay, are you going to continue to see this person? Do you like that person well enough where you want to continue to see them? And if you do, are you going to stay in your own separate residences? Are you going to even quarantine together? And we've known a few couples who've decided to do that. But it really does, I think, accelerate this idea of being exclusive with somebody. Whereas if we were not in quarantine, people may have been still continuing to date other people at the same time, and be able to just take their time with things. And so in a lot of ways, we've had this artificial sort of, pressure constraint now, and this pressure to have to pick one person if we were early in a relationship. So there are certainly some perks to that. And some of you may have already been experiencing this, where you really get to know that one person and focus on that one person, which leads to greater understanding of who that person is, who you are with that person, rather than dating several people at once and having more of that superficial relationship. So there's a lot of depth that's available and getting to know each other, even if it's a fairly new relationship. Those formalities start to go away. We're at home most of the time, and whether you're at home together or whether you're home in your own respective places and doing a lot of virtual dates, I think that formality starts to fall away pretty quickly under these circumstances. And so you can start to see who that other person is in their regular day-to-day, rather than just like sort of dressed up and going out on a date. It also allows for an opportunity to see what the characteristics of that person are like. Are there traits that you want for yourself or not? Do they tend to be optimistic or pessimistic? How do they handle stressors, whether it's boredom or true, like, other financial stressors or anything, job loss that might be going on, and as well as COVID-19 itself. So, you get to know each other a lot better. Some of the things that, like just to echo some of what Kayleen has said is, how do you use this time to continue to deepen the relationship? And she's talked about leaning into creativity, continue to try to make things interesting. I think that it can be very easy for things to just follow this sort of rut or routine, and we don't have a lot of stimulation happening right now in life. So how does it that you can make things interesting? And Kayleen gave a lot of great ideas for dates, different activities you can try virtually, and whether you're in the same home or not. How do you maybe have different theme nights, cook each other dinner? The other thing is, as she said, is to lean into more vulnerability. This is your time to really speak up and be heard. And how is it that you can bring your authentic self to this relationship, rather than feeling like you've got to put on your best face at all times? Life is hard right now, and we can do hard things. However, are you going to let that person in to help you with that or not? Are they letting you in to help you with that? Have some conversations too, as hard, difficult as it may be. At some point, have a conversation about what is it that you'd like to see happen after the quarantine lifts and we're free to move about the world again. Is this a person that you want to spend more time with and remain exclusive with? Has this deepened and you want to take it to that next level or not? You may also realize that you don't really want to continue seeing this person. You've gotten to know them in a way that helps you to realize that they're not the best person for you. So some of the other, boundaries also to keep is to make sure, even if you really start liking somebody, that you don't fall into this, like, oh, make them your everything, especially when we don't have as much happening right now in our lives. How do you continue to maintain the activities that make you feel good about yourself, keep you healthy? Again, those hobbies, other social relationships. But it's, I think, easy, especially when we don't have a lot of other distractions, to have that person suddenly become your world during this time. So continue to find balance by doing some of these other things for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, Monica, I will say you're kind of touching on actually a lot of really important things that can show up again in all these different like phases of our relationship status. I think that vulnerability piece is something that actually is important, from right singlehood to exploritating dating to now officially being in long-term relationships. That vulnerability, it is such a key essence to all of this. And kind of talking actually about like, that phrase of like, or not phrase, phase of like, that relationship that was started during this quarantine to now maybe a relationship that is more of a long-term relationship. So maybe something that started before quarantine, you guys have been dating for quite a bit of time. um, like all these other things, it comes with its own challenges. And some of the challenges, of course, is if you guys are cohabitating, that lack of space. You might get real frustrated with having to be around your partner 24/7. It's exhausting, right? You are probably used to at least the two of you guys going off to work, coming back home, sharing what happened at work or something, and just having those degree of compartmentalization. That's probably pretty different for you guys now who are in long-term relationships. And for those of you who are in long-term relationships that are maybe living separately, I'm not sure if anyone answered that in the poll or not, regarding if they were in a long-term relationship but living apart. But for those who are, my guess also, it's not necessarily the lack of space, but actually the fact that there's too much space, right? That we don't get that quality time that we really need. Living apart's hard during a quarantine, and trying to figure out your guys' boundaries during all of this. Of course, there's other challenges besides, the space and the lack of quality time, but like the boundaries that each of our partners need, that spark and frustration of feeling maybe disconnected and feeling like things are boring, kind of what Dr. Sharma was saying here. Plans also, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I had a lot of friends and loved ones here who had to take a pause with those weddings or trips or graduations or engagements, things like that, that everyone was really looking forward to. And I mean, now it's kind of right now pause, which is really disappointing, of course. So it's important that we acknowledge that with our spouses. Kind of leaning into that vulnerability piece here, I think probably one of the best things that we can do with our partners is actually kind of share with each other how we're doing. So one of a great tool that you can use with your spouse here or whomever you might be dating is doing a numbers check-in. So something that can be helpful here is we hear the saying, oh, relationships are 50-50. And the truth is they're not really 50-50. Some weeks are 20-80, some weeks are 60-40. It's all over the map. Sometimes it is 50-50. But especially during time of a quarantine, our spouses or partners may not necessarily be at a number in which they can attend to the relationship the way you would like them to. So checking in with your partner saying, hey, where are we at? Where are we at this week? Your partner might say, I'm at a 30. It's low, right? We're not, we're not at the number maybe we'd like to be. And maybe you check in with yourself and you say, well, you know what? I'm actually at a 20 or even lower. Instead of turning to each other and feeling like we have to rely on each other to kind of get our needs filled, the two of you, if you guys are both at a low number, look outward, look externally. How can we make this week better and maybe more at 100 rather than, a rather than 50 between the two of you guys. What are we needing in terms of getting that extra 50 somewhere? Maybe don't worry about dinner this week. Maybe get some takeout. Maybe it is don't worry about those high intense responsibilities. If you can, maybe take a personal day from work or something. If we are trying to take care of kids during this time, maybe it's also getting some like online classes for the kids or something like that. Find those external resources to help you guys get through this together. And another piece of this is not just getting through it together, but also see if we can lean into our relationships at this time. Believe it or not, this is a good time also to actually discover more about your partner. You may feel like you know them like the back of your hand, but you probably have never had to be in a position where you've had to spend months and months and months on end here, like 24/7 basically with your partner. You probably are discovering some degree new things about them. So lead into that part, discover more things, grow that, what we call the love map and everything, which also leads us to talking about how important it is for people to lean into their love languages. You guys may have heard, that phrase being tossed around a lot. If you guys aren't familiar with love languages, I would actually encourage you to go and take the love language assessment. That is for free online, and you guys might discover some new things about each other. Something I also recommend couples to do is, this isn't the most romantic thing in the world, but it may help, is take some time, write down all the things that you wish your partner would do. So maybe things like, oh, I wish my partner would do more spontaneous gestures, or I wish my partner would, bring me home flowers. I wish my partner would help me clean the kitchen or would cook me a nice meal. All these are different examples of love languages. If we write down the things that we like the most and we exchange it with our partners, your partner literally has a physical copy of things that they can do to help increase the love and affection between the two of you guys. So no excuses there, if anything. So if anything, this is a good opportunity for you guys also to work on the things maybe that were a challenge before quarantine, such as communication, such as those love languages, and find ways to use this opportunity for you guys to bond together rather than to pull apart. Recognize your partner may not be doing super hot during this. They might be really struggling. Patience, kindness, vulnerability are going to be the things that are going to help you guys get through this. Lean in together when it comes to those disappointments on events that maybe we haven't, or that we had to cancel or put a pause on. That way you guys are navigating all of this together.
Great, thank you, Kayleen. I'm just noticing the time, and I do see a couple of questions that have come in, but I do want to just quickly acknowledge that some of you may also be wondering about what to do after the quarantine ends. This way that we spend this time together will hopefully give you a sense of just all you have to do is decide, do I want to continue to see this person or not? You don't have to decide anything more than that. And you'll be getting a lot of information about your partner during this time. But there are going to be periods of things like boredom, and just a lull, and it's okay. That's going to be true of any long-term relationships, quarantine or no quarantine, and boredom is just a natural part of it. Don't judge a relationship based on that. But like, well, I don't really have a whole lot to talk about with my partner right now, and are we meant to be together? That is not like a really good way to base a relationship's health on, because again, it's such a natural part of long-term relationships. Periods of connection and disconnection, periods of feeling turned on with your partner and then turned off by your partner. All of that is perfectly normal. So think more in terms of, does this partner meet my fundamental needs? Am I feeling cared for and respected by my partner? Does my partner listen to me and want to spend time with me? So starting to look at some of those fundamental things. I do want to just quickly mention a couple of questions to see if you can answer some of these. So someone had asked about, like, basically right now during the quarantine, finding that because you want companionship, you find that your standards have shifted. I'm guessing maybe decreased because you want the companionship, but you don't necessarily want to pursue something with a partner that you may not be compatible with outside of quarantine. Although it is nice to have a companionship, and just we're asking thoughts on that. I personally think that we date for all different kinds of reasons. So some of us date to just have fun, to just have companionship, just to spend some time with someone during this period or for a specific area that we want to pursue in our lives and have fun with it, keep it light. Other people are wanting to date for a more serious partner. And, you know, I think it could help for you to just be clear on what is it that you're looking for right now. And it helps sometimes for me, at least, like write things down so that I can see them clearly, and then see, does this partner and how you're pursuing dating or meeting people in line with what it is that you're looking for, so that we don't accidentally get sidetracked, which can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to add anything, Kayleen?
Sure. Just, real quick, I guess here is that, I think if the question also is kind of related to this idea of like standards, boundaries, and the people maybe that we're kind of used to dating versus the people that we maybe are a little reluctant to date, I actually think it's a good opportunity maybe to kind of explore dating people that we originally were feeling maybe somewhat reluctant to date. So maybe it opens up opportunity to give people a chance that maybe we weren't giving before, and to discover like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing fit. Like I'm really connecting with somebody. So for example, if we're like hung up on looks or something like that. So for women, I think a lot of times we hear women struggle with dating a guy who might be shorter than them or something. This is a good opportunity maybe to say like, all right, screw the shortness. Like, I just want to see if there's someone out there that I connect with. And who knows, maybe you end up really connecting with somebody and you really end up being 100% attracted to them, despite maybe that original, frame of mind here regarding like those standards that we have. At the same time, though, I do want to emphasize the importance of our standards should never change on how we feel like we should be treated. And I think this is something that is important. If we feel like it's important for us to feel like we're dating someone who's, great at communicating and great at, showing affection and love in a relationship, I do think it's important to maintain some bit of standard regarding our expectations on how we feel we should be treated, and we should be treated with good value, of course.
Mm-hmm. Right. Someone had written about having some anxiety because right now with the quarantine, you don't have as much interest in dating during quarantine, but you do worry about how this quarantine is delaying starting to date again once the quarantine lifts.
Mm-hmm.
I want to acknowledge that, like, that's been tough for a few different people who feel this pressure for whatever reason, just like timelines, the way that they envision their lives moving forward, and to not have that available to us right now. There is some loss that's experienced through this right now, for so many different people for a number of different reasons. And this is absolutely one of those things that people are experiencing some loss around.
Yeah, for sure. I want to emphasize the normalization actually of that feeling, just because I don't know who wrote the question, but you are not alone actually with that feeling. I would say everyone whom I'm working with, as a therapist, but also in personal life here too, have reported that feeling, actually, have reported being like, I feel like I'm anxious about dating, and I'm anxious about losing time and feeling like missing fundamental steps or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we have someone else who made a comment, and I don't know if you could see each other's chats or not, but someone here has a link to a dating resource, and also it's an article in Glamour magazine with some creative date ideas, and also has a local matchmaking service in Chicago called Quarantine Bay, for Chicagoans only. And so that's something, there's a number of resources. I'm loving seeing some other people now putting some questions on, but thank you so much for sharing that resource. It's going to be interesting. I'm going to check it out personally, I can say. Another question: during quarantine, I have reflected and found a lot of really terrible qualities about myself. Just got broken up with a few weeks prior to quarantine, and have learned in the past with relationships I've been selfish, steamrolled, either totally engaged or totally unengaged, and feel when things start to get serious, they get stale. How would you suggest I try to move forward knowing I have these terrible qualities, and knowing that I don't want to date, I want to date to get married? First of all, you're talking about like some, I guess, like realizations about yourself. I think that that's great that quarantine is offering that. To hear you call yourself terrible, just the mere fact that you're concerned about this and wanting to see new ways of being around this, I think makes you not so terrible, because you're wanting to make improvements. You're doing some self-reflection during this time. Um,
Mhm.
let's see. So, and again, just like, so it looks like just some patterns that it is that you've been seeing in yourself. And then this idea that you start to become disengaged when you meet somebody and start dating them, that things start to get stale. So how to move forward knowing I have these qualities, and that you do want to date to get married. You're looking for something serious. You don't want, it's on what I'm understanding is you're not wanting to just start to date, get bored, cut it off, date another person, get bored, cut it off, but you're really looking to find somebody that you can have a partner, longer term partnership with, potentially marriage with, and you find that you're getting in your own way with that. You know, that's something that, again, this time with introspection, a lot of times it helps to talk to other people, whether it's your friends who know you really well and can give you some feedback. They see some of the patterns that you go through, finding anchors that, you know, when your friends who can call you out on those behaviors, when they can start to see you approaching people that way. Certainly therapy can help. Counseling is definitely a resource that can also help have a better understanding and start to do something different. It's really easy to get caught up in old patterns, and we're blind to them a lot of times. Even when we're step back and we can see them, when we're in it, we're very blind to it, and we just kind of fall back into same habits. So that therapy can help with that in terms of, you know, helping you to identify when you start to fall back into those patterns and like really take a look at what's going on for me and where's that pull to fall back, and how is it that you can start to, again, intentionally do something different, even if it's uncomfortable, but start to build a muscle around that idea of doing something different, and get the support to do that, to do the hard things. Did you want to add anything, Kayleen?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with what you said. I think a lot of this is, of course, you know, as cheesy as it may this sound, self-love is important right now. Recognize that we are just, no one's going to be perfect in a relationship at all, you know, and it's something that it's okay to recognize our flaws here, but also to recognize that despite, you know, the flaws that we might be experiencing in dating here, that you're still deserving of a wonderful, like, kind relationship, and that when we work on ourselves, we inevitably work towards connecting with a relationship that is going to last a little long, and to when we develop that self-love and that self-dedication, it really is going to help you feel like you're going to end up meeting somebody that also values that part of yourself and recognizes that you aren't going to be perfect in a relationship, and that's okay. And also, though, appreciate your own self-love and your own journey, of course.
Mhm. Yeah. I'll go ahead and ask one more question that we got. And oh, someone said that you can't see other people's comments, which is actually good in some ways, because I want this to feel safe and anonymous to ask you questions. Someone else had asked about, like, you know, as the quarantine lifts, the pandemic is going to continue, and, you know, like wanting to know, like, how slow or fast to get intimate with somebody, knowing that getting COVID-19 is a risk.
Mhm.
Do you want to take this one, Kayleen?
Sure. So yeah, absolutely. That's a real thing, right? We know this pandemic's real. We know that there's risk of, absolutely. I think it does go back to the previous statement I was kind of saying before regarding boundaries and safety. Right, your boundaries are so important when it comes to dating in general, whether there is a pandemic or a quarantine going on. So it's important that you guys do establish boundaries. If you feel like those boundaries are not being respected, definitely take a moment maybe to kind of reflect on, you know, how healthy this relationship is, just because we want partners that respect those boundaries. So when it comes to meeting up, or, you know, when it comes to the trying to think here, like, you know, actually engaging socially again and everything, definitely asking the question here of saying, like, hey, have we been healthy in terms of socially distancing, all of that? You know, I'm trying to think here. When it comes to the actual communication piece, making sure that we do tell, you know, those potential partners what we've been doing in terms of socializing, whether you know, we have been hanging out with people or not, if we have been hanging out with people who haven't been also maybe following the recommended social distancing, maybe to take and withhold a little bit longer from meeting up in person and engaging in those creative dating outlets, of course. But yeah, if we feel that there's a risk, just like if we feel there's a risk of like an STD or, you know, HIV, right? Asking your partner, hey, like, let's, you know, be safe. Let's make sure that if we feel like there's some symptoms, let's get tested, kind of thing. I know it's an uncomfortable conversation, but it's so important that we do maintain our own health through it. So just approaching this safety the same way we would do with like that the like, again, sexual intimacy way here, where we would be asking if somebody has been safe, if they haven't been tested before, you know, asking them those similar questions of being like, hey, were we safe with quarantine? Because I want to make sure that we can safely meet up.
Great. I will ask one more question because I think that this might be our last question then. Okay, and then we do have like some takeaways if you'll stick with us a little bit longer. I know we're over time, but this is more a question about having some issues or difficulty getting dates or responses on some of the dating apps, even though you've been trying and you have been trying to change up your profile pictures and things like that. But there's a lot of pressure that you're feeling in home because of just being unmarried, and there's some pressure to get married from family. So just wanting to learn how to navigate through, like, while we are here in quarantine and relying so much on dating apps, like how to make the most of it, how to make it work. Did you want to answer any of this, Kayleen, or should I jump in?
You go ahead and start.
Okay. Okay. You know, I do want to again acknowledge that this is a lot of pressure, especially now. Any plans that we might have had for dating, a lot of them have been like put to the wayside. And, you know, in some ways, you know, this time with the dating apps, like that's certainly a great way to try to meet people. There's a number of other ways too, besides dating apps. You could try to meet people through setups of people that we know. So there's a number of avenues. I know that meeting in person or just being out and about and living your life is not a way that we have available right now. You know, in the meantime, as far as the dating apps are concerned, you know, it always helps to get like at least a second set of eyes to look at it and to help. So if you have a trusted friend or someone who can take a look at that with you, and you can make it a fun project to try to do that together in terms of like maybe taking some new photos and creating a profile. But it does oftentimes help to have somebody who can help write the profile with you. And if you find that you don't have someone in your life who you can comfortably do that with, then I know that there are some services on, you know, that will help with that. Some books that even like talk about how is it that you can make yourself most appealing in terms of online dating. There's a book called Data, A Love Story, and I'm forgetting her name right now, but she also has a TED Talk, Data, A Love Story, and that she talks all about like what makes a profile the most appealing to people who are looking, the way that you have your photograph like a little bit up, and you know, that how you use descriptive words in your profile, and more fun and lighthearted and playful. And you want to sound more like a positive energy, that you're a happy person. So certainly there are some available resources to help with that, as well as, again, if you have somebody that you can turn to that you trust to help with that.
Yeah, actually, to throw in another resource here, I recognize this resource is more so leading towards women, straight women dating and everything like that. So, but I also actually think this resource is good just for, it's just got solid advice for everybody. But it's marketed that way. Matthew Hussey, if you guys are familiar with him, he's like a really well-known dating coach. He's great, actually. His stances are always about like, make sure that people are investing in you just as much as you are investing in them. I think it's a great stance to have. It's about valuing yourself as well. So definitely check out Matthew Hussey. I use some of his stuff as well for just dating recommendations.
Great. So we wanted to leave you with a few takeaways before we close for today, and Kayleen's going to run through some of those.
Yeah, so the first takeaway here is use this pause for introspection. Introspection is great. It can be painful, absolutely, but it's a really good time though to reconnect with your value. It's a great time to connect with what you're feeling, what you're going through, and just just taking time for yourself. There's not a ton of opportunity in our life here where we get to be totally centered and focusing on ourselves. So take this time right now. Quarantine was never meant to be a time for you to be like thriving and killing it. And, you know, it's a good time to take a pause. It's a good time to, yeah, just take that introspection. The other thing we want you guys to kind of take away from today is don't think quarantine is a lost opportunity to date. There actually is potentially an even, oops, an even greater opportunity actually to get to know someone just because of the fact that there is a new experience that we're all navigating. We don't have those physical things getting in the way. We could really connect with somebody on an emotional way that we didn't even realize. The third one here, we do want you guys to kind of take away is that relationships aren't always meant to kind of just entertain. They're a way to have like a companion and support in your life. It's not necessarily bad to date for fun and everything like that, but at the same time, we don't want you guys to, you know, go through these periods of life where, you know, there's dullness and, you know, disconnecting or we recognize there is going to be dullness and disconnect in your relationships, but to recognize that, again, that relationships aren't always going to feel that way when we are in more serious relationships, and that it's okay for that dullness to exist. It's okay for there to be some disconnect, especially during this time. The fourth takeaway here is creativity and vulnerability, how important actually that can be used as a tool and a foundation to singlehood, dating, or long-term relationships. It is wonderful. Explore it, enjoy it. Vulnerability can be really hard to do, but it is a powerful tool. Shout out to Brene Brown and all. So, and then of course, the last thing we want you guys to kind of take away is the fact that you guys who are in relationships are experiencing some emotional challenges or can be during this time, such as depression, anxiety, fear, you know, loss. Ambiguous loss is a big topic right now, and it can be a strain on the relationship. It is absolutely 100% okay to go and get help during this. There's a lot of taboo around couples counseling for some odd reason. The truth is, though, that you guys are deserving of being able to kind of go and have a space to talk about some of these struggles, to get support. We are here, if anything, to help support the relationship. We're not here to judge relationships. We are here to best help you guys go in a direction that makes sense for the both of you. And that's maybe developing helpful tools and stuff. So during this time, don't be afraid to reach out for help. We're really big into the idea that community is important even in relationships.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Kayleen, and thank you all for joining us today. If you do want to reach out for help and you want to call Envision You where we work and mention the pandemic pause, then your first consult appointment with one of our therapists would be for free. And we're going to be doing this once a week. I think next week we have one of our therapists is talking to a family lawyer to talk a little bit about how to navigate, again, some of the things at home and the co-parenting when there's divorced families, some of the boundaries and communication. So thank you so much for taking a pause with us today. And always remember, there's power in the pause. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.